Ross Chastain hitting the side of Kyle Larson for the second time in 14 days as well. You really can't put a price on that, of course, because Larson was affected by Chastain taking pull out back at Dover 2 weeks ago on Monday. But that put us in overtime. It also put Ross Chastain out. But Chastain over the radio was saying as well on the previous restart, again, Larson was fighting with him as well. And over the radio, Chastain was saying, well, he's going to have to push us harder than that. He's going to have to fight us harder than that as well. And Chastain was already been in the walls today as well, so he had damage to the car. And then he said in the post-race interview, I was deliberately pushing him up, I was trying to push him, didn't expect to wreck us, but again, we all saw it coming. We all knew it was going to happen. I'm all for giving drivers the aggression when it's necessary, but you can't let it get over-aggressive. You can't let him become like a spoilt driver. You've got to let him really sort of reel it in. I want a penalty for Ross Chastain. I want him to actually learn his actions has consequences. I think he should be benched for a race for irresponsible riding and irresponsible conduct now. In the past 4 weeks, he's caused so much drama across NASCAR. Yeah, it's great for TVing, but it's not great for the image of the sport. He's causing problems. He needs to be put in his place as well. No sport is bigger than one single driver.
Ben, he's saying Ross Chastain should be parked. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, that's a bold take. I can understand where Josh is coming from because, Josh is in the UK and, the European series are typically a lot more strict when it comes to avoidable contact than NASCAR is. I don't expect anything that severe to be coming Ross Chastain's way in the immediate future. But, coming from Josh's perspective, I could honestly maybe start to see where he's, thinking the wheels are turning in his head that's where he's going. I like I said, don't think that he's going to go that NASCAR would go that far at this point. Certainly a bold take on Josh's part. I'm interested to hear what you have to say about it, Joe. But I guess that tells you what Josh thinks about how the aggression's gotten out of hand with Ross Chastain here. I mean, this, like I said, if this were an isolated incident, I don't think we're having this conversation. But once it continues to boil over as much as it has, and we start talking about this every week, like it feels like we have this season, maybe it's time to have. Maybe not a parked or benching conversation or a race suspension conversation, but certainly a conversation about what NASCAR needs to do to maybe start reeling this in a little bit.
I would say in the past, we would have seen NASCAR sort of have that conversation with a driver that, hey, you and another driver, like for example, Bodine, Earnhardt back then, you two are racing each other too hard. Guys got to settle it down. Take care of your business. In the past, we would have seen veteran drivers, I seem to be talking about this lately because of Ross Chastain, when Ernie Irvan was brand new in the Morgan McClure Chevrolet, spinning people, getting in trouble. Finally, it seemed to be when Richard Petty, Dale Earnhardt, he went into the garage, I got a race bet, I'm sorry, guys. It seemed that was always in place. But now in this era of NASCAR, that doesn't seem to be in place. I feel NASCAR, there's sort of a lot more hands off, compared to where they were in the past. The drivers, I mean, they're all racing each other hard. Ross Chastain didn't do anything too egregious. He did the same thing essentially Truex did. If there was any other driver besides Ross Chastain, I don't think we'll be talking about how they ruined their good day, they ruined Kyle Larson's day, but wouldn't be talking about the driver being over aggressive because this was essentially coming down to us a win, and we know the clean air really matters. Overall, I don't see NASCAR going to be parking Ross Chastain anytime soon. If anything, what are we going to be seeing? Just like the last week, everyone's going to be talking about Chastain this week. It seems Chastain where it's the Hail Melon, the over-aggression, the wins, the fight now with no aggression. People are talking about NASCAR. That's something NASCAR right now, I would say they're enjoying it. When will it cross the line? Will that be when Ross Chastain gets in another fight? Will it be when there's a major accident caused by Ross Chastain? Because right now we know everyone walked away, but we know there's still a lot of safety concerns with this car too, and it's just slowly building up to where I would hate to see somebody get hurt, but it's that when NASCAR is going to step in. I think this is really going to be interesting to see what happens.
Well, I'm glad you brought all that up, Joe, because I think this is a very important factor to remember here, and I've seen a lot of people say this on social media as well. You can love Ross Chastain, you can hate Ross Chastain. You cannot deny his presence has been good for NASCAR publicity over the last several months in particular, going all the way back to what he did at Martinsville with the Hail Melon that was seen 100 million times on social media, literally 100 million impressions. I think that thing got to all the different times we've been talking about him. I mean, he's given us something to talk about at the very least, and it's left fans with plenty of conversations to have, and they're certainly divided on the issue. Again, I think it probably would be a bad look for NASCAR to park him tomorrow or later this week based on this one incident here, because I don't think this was nearly egregious enough to warrant that. I think if NASCAR were to go down that road, it would have to be something very blatant and very, a situation where you can't argue what Ross's intentions were. Ross could, try to shrug it off all he wanted. That would be what it would take. And then you can maybe point to all the previous incidents that he's had or been involved in or instigated, and maybe use that as rationale for giving him a 1 race or 2 race ban or whatever. So again, I think a pretty bold take to say the least from Josh there, although I can understand where he's coming from a European mindset, but at the same time, I think it wouldn't be necessarily a bad idea for NASCAR to maybe sit down and have a conversation about how we police this going forward.
Now, one thing I just started thinking about, we heard Cliff Daniels bring up Chevrolet in the radio. If NASCAR doesn't have that conversation, could Chevrolet, the manufacturer, say, hey, we want you all on the table, we want to discuss, because we don't want a Chevrolet causing another Chevrolet to crash out or worse, take each other out, and neither one win the race. If Byron didn't get around him, it could have been Harvick in a Ford or another Ford again that win. Do you think Chevrolet could maybe have a role?
I'm sure Chevy's not going to be happy, and GM certainly aren't going to be happy with, 2 of their teams not working together and taking each other out. But, again, Joe, I'll go back to something that, after the Bubba Wallace, Kyle Larson incident last year at Vegas, I put together this compilation to try to prove to people that Kyle Petty's supposedly hot take about him needing to be suspended for the rest of the year wasn't all that hot at all, because it was consistent with what Kyle had said in previous instances of intentional wrecks over the years. And there was one clip I included where I got a couple of comments saying, thank you for throwing this in there, because this is the most important part of your entire compilation. It's the second most viewed video in my YouTube channel's history. A lot of people really seem to like this one thing that Kyle said. He mentioned, when are owners going to control their own house and step in and rein their drivers in and make this a priority for them to take care of? Because this is not NASCAR's problem all the time. When you have situations like this, the owners need to be the ones that step in and say, we need to have a conversation with our driver because this has gone over the line. This has gotten out of hand. Now, it's up to Justin Marks ultimately in Trackhouse and that management team over there to decide what point does this need to get to before we have that conversation with Ross Chastain, because I think Ross Chastain and Justin Marks seem to have a very good working relationship. That team has been firing on all cylinders and has grown at a faster pace than I think any of us have expected. But at what point would Trackhouse go to Ross and say, maybe we should try dialing back the aggression a little bit, because this is how many race cars have we torn up or how many times that we've been involved in a controversy like this. Maybe we should take a step back and try to avoid this in the future. So again, that's up to Trackhouse to decide, I think, just as much as it is NASCAR. When do we step in and have this conversation here?
Trackhouse definitely has a role in it. It's going to be very interesting. And now we have North Wilkesboro, a short track, short tempers, all-star race. It's going to be really interesting to see what happens.
And it's an exhibition. There's no points on the line. So I think drivers are going to be more willing to take those risks.
More willing to take those risks, and maybe more willing to, if Chastain's near them, sort of remind them, hey, I'm not a big fan of you. So it's going to be really interesting.